Hi, thanks so much for watching this video. So this is actually an apology. In 1995 and in 1998, I was a student, actually a disciple, and I worked for and with Leonard Orr, the founder of Rebirthing. And part of that work entailed sharing his teachings, which I did with quite a number of different people in different settings, even in different countries. And one of his doctrines is what he calls emotional energy pollution. In fact, it's one of the central things that he teaches. And I am making this video to apologize for having shared that teaching. I consider it absolute misinformation, absolute distortion, one of the most harmful spiritual beliefs I've ever come across. So I hesitate to even share the belief because I consider it so toxic and so poisonous. And yet it's out there and it actually shows up in other forms. So I'm going to speak it, and I would invite you to not believe it. So the idea, according to Leonard Orr, is that if two people are in the same space together, whichever person is more spiritually awake than the other um, takes on the negative energy of the person who is less spiritually evolved. According to Leonard Orr, there's no choice at this. This is a law of the universe. There's no way around it. If two people are interacting, whoever is higher is basically a more awake spiritual person, is a spiritual vacuum cleaner, and they it's not that they must, it's that they absolutely will take on the other person's negative energy, and there's no choice about it. I consider this to be complete bullshit. Absolute bullshit. And even worse than bullshit, very, very harmful. Much less false, but it's one of the most disempowering beliefs I've ever encountered. Yes, when two people are interacting, and yes, when two people are sharing space, there can be an energy exchange, sometimes a negative energy exchange. The idea, though, that we have no choice over it and that it happens automatically and that there's nothing we can do about it, that's victimhood. The long and short of it is that's victimhood. And in my experience, the only time I experience this phenomenon is when I'm not being authentic. For example, if I'm talking to someone and I don't want to be talking to them, or I'm doing something that I don't want to be doing, that's the only time that I experience this phenomena where I feel drained. And Leonard Orr goes into great detail about how it literally feels like an attack, like an emotional. He doesn't say the word rape, but the language he uses, like it's almost an emotional rape. So I personally believe that what this is really about is unhealed trauma. That it's actually not about other people's energy. That it's about our own unresolved issues. And in this case, Leonard Orr's own unresolved issues. So I would like to deeply apologize. Luckily, I got out of his organization and out of that relationship before I was able to share this with too many people. And to every person who I shared this with, this idea, my absolute deep apologies. My absolute deep apologies. So what I've learned from all this is that the spiritual world, just because someone says they're a spiritual teacher, doesn't mean they actually are. Just because someone says they're enlightened, says they know the truth, doesn't mean that they do. More often than not, in my experience in the spiritual world, there's a lot of spiritual teachers who are teaching partial truths. One way to really tell, one surefire way to tell whether someone is teaching what's really true and really helpful has to do with money. Someone who is teaching um, the deepest truths, they can't charge large amounts of money for it. It just doesn't work that way. They can charge enough money to have a reasonable living, but they not only see, it's kind of like this. So, the truth is what sets us free. It's what liberates us from all our suffering and all our problems. Someone who has experienced the truth, who has found freedom, is like someone who has escaped from a house that's on fire. Escaped from a horrifically painful situation, and escaped with their life to boot. And so once they've made it out of the house, all they want to do is maintain their own freedom, because it can still require a little bit of effort to stay in that state of freedom and to help other people. It's like, are they gonna block the doorway of the other people who are trying to escape from this burning house and try and charge them large sums of money? Not someone who's really found freedom, not someone who's really found the truth. And that's the other piece about, this doctrine, emotional energy pollution. It doesn't set people free. It actually binds them. When I was living this, my entire life revolved around being afraid of other people's energy, avoiding people, and then spending all of my spare time trying to, quote, purify myself from other people's energy. That's not freedom. That's bondage. That's misery. And I've watched it with many of other Leonard Orr's students and with Leonard Orr himself. His entire life revolves around, or it used to, I hope it doesn't anymore, managing other people's energy. That's not what life is about. Life is about living and enjoying. So, once again, I'm so sorry for having shared that partial truth, because yes, energy exchange happens between people, but it's a very distorted version of it. And I invite everyone on the spiritual path not to believe anything that any spiritual teacher says, but to find out what's true for themselves. Take it on as an experiment, as a hypothesis, as a maybe. And the problem is, many of the spiritual teachers out there are very charismatic, and many of them have quasi paranormal powers. Leonard Orr was one such example. Just hanging around with him, I got totally blissed out. He, as do many other spiritual teachers, are able to radiate or emanate a very powerful energy. And so then the mind thinks, oh, well, he must be enlightened. Oh, he must be able to save me, whether it's Leonard Orr or any other teacher. And it's just not the case. There are many, many beings who can radiate strong energy who aren't actually liberated. I'm one of them. People have very powerful experiences when they meditate with me and when I lead group meditations. I've had actual healings occur, spontaneous healings occur during group meditations I've led. But I'm not perfect. I'm not a liberated guru. I'm just a human being who's developed a capacity. And as are, I would say, 99.99% of the spiritual teachers out there. They've just developed some capacities a little bit more than most people. But that doesn't mean they're perfected or they're going to be able to save us. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you got a lot out of this video, and I hope it saves you some time. Take care. Much love.